So I've had a few people asking how to get better at drifting. So in this video I thought I'd try my best to explain the different types of drift cars you can build. Then onto the massive debate whether all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive cars are better, and also how to get more points on drift zones and in open drifting. As always, all tune and track codes will be linked in the description below, and please do hit that subscribe button and leave a comment with any further questions you may have, and I will try my best to answer them all. Enjoy the video. So first up, the type of drift car you can build. I'm going to try and break these down into 2 or 3 different categories depending on different driving styles and what the car will be used for. But honestly, you have to try them all out to figure out what works better for you. So firstly, we have the high point scorers. These are going to be the cars you want to use on open drifting and on drift zones to get the highest score possible. Normally they are harder to control and are usually set up so it feels like you're driving on ice. If you've watched my videos before, you see that I love this Formula Drift Toyota Supra in all-wheel drive form. It's an absolute monster. It's incredibly hard to drive, but it picks up speed like a scolded cat and holds massive angle in the corners. It also has no lateral grip, meaning I can hold out a drift more, therefore having to not mangy between corners. Let me explain. Firstly, by driving on ice, I mean a car that's stupidly slippery. This car will drift from one corner to the other in one swooping drift without the need to keep changing directions between the corners. This change of direction over and over again while on a straight bit of road is called a mangy. The reason why you do not want to mangy is simply because a portion of changing from left to right, your car becomes dead straight and therefore you are getting 0 points. So this will crush your chances of getting a high score. So like I say, having a car that drives like it's on ice and eliminates the need to change direction on the straights over and over again is essential when going for high scores. To make a car handle like it's drifting on ice, there are a few things you can do. Firstly, add a ton of power to the car and either leave the stock tyres on, normally if it's an older car that comes on standard rubbish tyres like this Toyota AE86, or if the standard car comes on some pretty grippy tyres from factory like the Formula Drift cars or Hoonigan cars, put on the drag tyres. The drag tyres have no lateral grip like I said earlier, meaning when you're in the drift you get absolutely no sideways grip, leading to bigger, longer drifts. Then the next thing you can do is head into your tune and bump up the tyre pressures as well as the stiffness of the springs and dampers, especially on the rear. And if you have active aero on the car, set the aero to top speed, then your car should drift like it's on ice. Obviously you want to match that with a drift suspension and a drifty alignment, so a good amount of front camber and caster too. Whether you go rear wheel drive or all wheel drive is entirely up to you, but I do prefer all wheel drive as the front wheels will pull you around the corner and also stop you from spinning out, but onto that later in the video. So the downside of these super slippery cars is on the tighter technical tracks and drift zones you simply do not have the control needed to hit every corner at the correct angle or position in the road. So for this reason it is best to build multiple cars with slightly different grip levels to accommodate the different tracks and drift zones, especially when it comes to open drifting when there's no rewinds, or if you have loaded up a technical custom track or want to drift side by side with your friends where you'll definitely want a lot more grip and a lot more control. So I'm just going to give you a few examples of the cars that I use. They're different grip levels, they're different classes if you want to use them for open drifting, but give them all a go, see what you think, let me know in the comments below. So the other type of drift cars are the satisfying, clean and technical group of cars. These are going to be the cars that you want to use when drifting around custom tracks, when drifting with your friends, or when you're trying to get that really satisfying cinematic type of drift. Some of this style of car as well, like my Twerkstallion here, they're so easy to drift that they're perfect for beginners. So this type of build again does depend on the track and what you specifically want to use it for, but it can be rear wheel drive or front wheel drive, like I say, depending on the track. Or if you're twinning with someone else, you're definitely going to want rear wheel drive, and they will normally consist of a fair amount of power and quite a bit of grip. This extra grip means you have much better control over the car over the high scoring cars as mentioned before. This Hoonigan RX-7 is a great example of what I mean by clean cinematic drifts. This car is rear wheel drive with lots of grip on the front, but it spins up the rears with ease, meaning the drift will be much slower, so you'll not get the points required to get the high scores on the drift zones as mentioned before. But the car is super easy to control and damn it feels satisfying, drifting around, hitting all the corners perfectly. To build this kind of car you want about 800 to 1000 horsepower and some grippier tyres like the sports or drift tyres, accompanied by the drift springs and lower tyre pressures to give you that little bit extra grip. If you want to get really technical, however, you're going to want to have a go in an all-wheel drive grippy car like this Hoonigan Focus. This car has a very good amount of grip, so can change directions so fast, making it an ideal build for your stunt driving or gymkhana style of drifting. Like on this stunt track here by the YouTuber Don Juan Song. This car in the correct hands will be super fast and nip around the track drifting every single tight corner there is. I made a full video showcasing this track and this car. That is linked in the description below, so please do check that out. So the issue with these type of cars, like I touched on just now, is as good as they are just too slow or too grippy to get the amount of points needed for high scores. The Twerkstallion is way too slow, so although you may be able to hang the back end out around corners, the points will just not come fast enough due to the speed that you are travelling. And the Focus is just too grippy, so it will not carry the drift around the longer corners, and you will not be able to link up the corners that are further away from each other. So some awesome drift cars you can try out to get that satisfying drift or be really technical and destroy the tight corners are as follows. Next up, let's talk about the big debate, which is all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive. I touched on this earlier in the video, but I'll try and break it down a bit more and give you a few benefits of them both. So in my opinion, all-wheel drive I use for big points, as the front wheels will drive the car forwards, helping you round that corner whilst holding much more angle. They are also much faster at gaining speed, which means you'll have the speed coming out of one corner to fire at high speed into the next, allowing you to transition between corners in one swooping drift. Also, as the front wheels are driven, you really can change up directions fast, minimising the time you are travelling straight. All-wheel drive cars do, however, require a lot more throttle to get them around the corners and can be extremely twitchy, which really is the opposite of rear-wheel drive cars, which makes all-wheel drive cars very hard to get used to. But in my opinion, please do persevere, get used to them, because they are better for high scores. Then with the rear-wheel drive cars, I think they are much more forgiving and are much easier to use, especially if you're only just learning to drift. Rear-wheel drive cars can be used for high points as well, with the super slippery setup mentioned before. However, I do think you'll be putting yourself at a disadvantage and should only really use rear-wheel drive cars for high points if you cannot get on with all-wheel drive at all. So some positives with the rear-wheel drive cars, I personally think if I'm going to use a rear-wheel drive car, I'm going to go for those satisfying, cleaner drifts where the car is so predictable you can hit the perfect line in every corner. This perfect line is essential when driving side by side with other people, because the whole purpose is to position your car perfectly on the other driver's car door. At the end of the day, it is personal preference and I'll use both depending on what I'm doing, but I'll definitely use all-wheel drive for high scores and rear-wheel drive for pretty much everything else. So last but not least, I'm going to list out a few key points to help you guys get more points on your drift zones and in open drifting. So number one, as I said before, you need to link up the corners in one swooping drift and not mangy to minimise the time that your car is driving in a straight line or holding a small angle. Number two, more angle and more speed. This is exactly what it says on the tin. More angle around the corners and go faster. This is exactly why I prefer all-wheel drive cars. It allows you to do just that. Number three, simply go wider around the corners. This is purely because your car covers more distance when you go wide on a corner, so instead of hitting the apex of every corner like you would when racing, do the exact opposite and take a wide line. This covers more ground and it will also allow you to keep your speed up. Number four, if you're going for high scores in a drift zone, use rewinds. They can be super helpful if you don't hit the corner exactly where you need to, or if you go off the road. Number five, last but not least, in fact I think it might be the most important one, use your handbrake to move your car to the edge of the corner, to the outside of the corner. You see me loads in this Toyota Supra, holding the handbrake, you can hear the revs drop and the car just swoops out to the outside of the corner, putting me in the correct position to get that maximum points. So I hope you learned at least one thing from this video. If you did, please do leave a comment below, and if you disagree with anything I said, please also leave a comment below. It's nice to hear other people's thoughts and opinions. Anyway, please do like, comment and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.